Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a Cloudy Sheep, and we are playing Rule the Waves as the US. We are still at war against the United Kingdom in the third year now, or entering the fourth year actually. And we just realized that the Brits have sent four heavy ships, or capital ships, two battleships, two battle cruisers, into our home zone. So we are hoping to catch them off guard there. And maybe incur some damage on them. So that would be very nice. Let's see whether we can force them into battle in some fashion or the other. We are getting a lot more. And there we go. We actually won the war. And we are only getting 6 points, really, for this difference. Oh man, come on. So what would we want to take? So is Africa with the double I? I don't think so. I do not think that we could take anything worthwhile in North America. That's probably way too expensive, is it not? British Columbia, yeah, 20. Nova Scotia would be allowed, so I think it would be prudent to take Nova Scotia and maybe Grand Bahama, just so that we can conclude the war actually with there we go. No, there we go. And that'd be it. So here we go. Let's take a look at our newfound possessions. Everything in North America, everything in the Caribbean except for probably Curacao or something. Antilles, yeah. No, Curacao, of course, would be Dutch. And the only British remaining colony is British Columbia. So there is that. Let's look at our other positions. We do have the Falklands. So actually pretty much all the colonies in America, except for the Antilles and British Columbia, are now American. Well, United States American. And that's fine. We also have a small colony in Zanzibar, so in the Indian Ocean. We have Algeria that we took over, and a couple of these colonies. I think we started with the Philippines and probably Guam, and we won Guangzhou and Sumatra. We also won a couple of colonies in the Northeast Asia, Wai and Port Arthur, I'm just going to call it like that, from the Americans. So the only thing I'm going to do now is we play way past our original deadline, so I only think I want to have a brief look at the almanac, sort of compare where we stand, try to balance the budget, and then we'll obviously gonna resign, because it's time now and it's been a good ride, and we're gonna look at some of the memorable battles and all that in a bit more detail. So all in all, where do we stand? We, even after the war, have a budget of 250 million. That beats any other nation and probably a lot of, probably two smallest nations combined, certainly. So that's very nice to see. The only real contender is still Great Britain, I see, and Germany to some extent. Nevertheless, in terms of battleships that are active, we are on par with the Germans, and the Germans even have a bit heavier ships, which I find kind of interesting. Let's look at their latest designs: 10-14-inch guns, 11.5 in belt armor. They don't feel like they are the worst ships. Lothringen, oh well, these are rubbish. Just 6 guns on a broadside. Hannover class, 8 guns, 13 inches though, so there we go. Hannover, Brandenburg, 10-13-inch guns, yeah, they're pretty big. What do they have in terms of battle cruisers? The Zaitlitz class, 12-inch guns, pretty massive actually. And ooh, they even have a cruiser, a heavy cruiser. That's a weird design. 8 10-inch guns, super firing, and 14 so 7%, not 6, 6-inch guns at a speed of 28. Interesting design. I don't think we've seen that many heavy cruisers. Yeah, only the Germans have one, apart from us. They are also on par on battle cruisers, although theirs are considerably lighter than ours. I mean, ours are on average about, let's say, 35,000 tons maybe, including the Monroe class here, 56,000 tons. Whereas theirs are somewhat slower, as we can see, and quite a bit smaller indeed. How does that actually compare to the Sioux? It's a very similar size. Anyway, yeah, but their battleships are a bit bigger, and they are building one more, which seems to be of the new class, which we don't have any information about. But surprisingly, it's a bit smaller than what we've seen so far. Whereas ours, the Rhode Island, is really much bigger. Also has more higher caliber guns than we are used to. We are probably exceeding them in the gun calibers, so that's very nice to see. The Brits we really trimmed down. They lost a lot of ships in the last wars, including all in all just 1, 2, 3 battleships and 4 battle cruisers. Granted, quite a couple of them were older ones, but that also includes the Renown over here with the formidable 10, 16-inch guns that we beat just, I think, last episode. Right, and all of these small ships, you know, they don't matter quite as much. In terms of battle cruisers, I think we very much roundly have beaten them, although they have been in 3 battle cruisers, and that's an interesting development. Let's see whether we know anything about that design. Oh, they are also building a battle cruiser, a heavy cruiser. Look at that. Yeah, but we don't really know anything about the Redoubtable, except that it's a bit smaller than the Inconstant class, which I was afraid about. Very high caliber guns on these battlecruiser designs from the Brits. France, I think, would really be outclassed by 3 battleships. So yeah, that's not really that worthwhile to look at. 3 battlecruisers. I mean, they seem to be largish, but I don't think we need to be too afraid. Japan, 6 battleships, but I don't think they would be that dangerous. 12-inch guns, 14-inch guns, 14-inch guns. Yeah, they're not really that big of a threat. Russians, maybe a bit more, 10, 15-inch guns. Although just look at the armor, it's very slim. But a very fast design. Let's not forget about that either. 10-inch guns on the Julius Caesar. Oh, interesting design, a hexagonal design. Something that I think the Germans carried around in World War I actually quite a bit on some of the, especially older classes. I think they after that switched to the stagger design in sort of the Kaiser class. But the earliest ones, Helgoland I want to say, was a hexagonal design, sort of like this. Anyway, all in all, we have some advantage in battleships, good advantage in battle cruisers, I feel. Although, you know, looking at our ships that are in service, I think that at this point we'd probably want to scrap a couple of those, and that might include the Californian classes over here. I mean, they have 10 guns, but they're only 11-inch caliber. Their belt armor really isn't up to contemporaneous standards anymore. So, you know, I feel like these 2 ships would probably be scrapped. So I think, you know, that's something that we could do. Let's scrap these 2. Earning a little bit of money. Lots of ships over here. Of the other ships, I think we can sort by year and then by type. Does that work? Yeah, sort of, kind of, yeah. Yeah, it does actually. So, really, the Nevada was before the Oklahomas. I always thought the other way around. 9-inch armor. 11 atomic. Oh yeah, so these are just up armored versions of the Nevada. So I think all of these three designs would probably be mothballed, or at least put to reserve for now. The Pennsylvania as sort of a flagship that is very formidable, 12, so 50% more guns than the other ones. Very heavy secondary and tertiary battery, so I think we would want this to be active. In terms of the battle cruisers, I think the Lexington and Constitution class. So basically the 12-inch gun ships would be put to mothball situation, whereas Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, we want to keep them active probably. I think with the budget as is, we could do it like so. And maybe Constitution and Congress would be put to reserve actually. That does cost more money, but I think that should be fine. The Pueblo and the Sioux, I mean, these were, the Pueblo and the San Francisco, these are outdated ships since a long, long time. Probably I should never have designed them as is, but to be honest, they served their purpose well. They did well in being sent to theaters that were very out of the line, and there they could really shine and do their thing and destroy light cruisers. The speed didn't really was not such a big issue as one might think, because they would just with the opening salvo of the 10-inch guns and all the smaller guns devastate the enemy. But now the time has come, so we are going to see them off, and we are going to scrap these two ships. Yes. The Sioux, I think we want to keep. In fact, we're going to send this to be on foreign station, so that we do fulfill our requirement over there. So that would be nice. In terms of light cruisers, again, I think we do have quite a lot of old stuff kicking around that is not necessarily up to speed anymore. Just 2 torpedo tubes, a couple of mines, granted, but I think all in all the Tacoma classes have really served the purpose. It's funny to see that they were designed in 1910 and then built again in 1905. And sorry, 1905. So pretty long service period, or actually active build period, if you want. But now the time has come and they're being scrapped. We could actually have a look at our light cruiser situation here. So even that, even after scrapping that, there are more light cruisers in our service than on any other nation. And even in destroyers, we have some significant advantage, even over the Germans, which probably are at this point our closest competitor. So, with the other light cruisers, I think, in a real life situation, the Providences are fairly modern in that they have 8 torpedoes. Well, the Raleigh and the Providences aren't that different. Oh, I think actually the Providence is just a very simple rebuild of the Raleigh class, because the Raleigh class turned out slower than it should have been. So you know what? We are going to scrap the Raleigh, the Riverside actually, Raleigh class, and just keep around the Providences and the Oklahomas. And I think that would make our life much more easy. In fact, we are going to rebuild these 2 ships to the latest standard, because they are not on that level at all right now. We'd probably move these guys to a reserve situation, the Providences. That should be fine. And then the Oklahomas still, they will stay on active duty. These minesweepers here, I think they can be sold off. There's no point really to do that, except that they the maintenance here gets too high. We could of course update them and just refit them or anything, but I think we're just going to sell them off as well. So scrap these guys. We might actually want to have a look at our minesweeper situation. So year 30, I think that's really fine, just to have these Nebraskans are there, and all of these guys would probably be put to a mothball situation, and the Nebraskans would be put to reserve, even though they're just built. In terms of destroyers, the Paul Johnsons are our latest design. Fanning's not very far behind that. What's actually the difference? Oh, you're carrying a couple of more torpedoes? Yeah, that's fine. You obviously would all stay on active duty, especially with the speed that you have. Of the older ships, I think of all of these ships that have been around for such a long time, well, especially the Bainbridges, I think we would see off at this point. They're not that fast. They do carry only 2 torpedoes. They don't really carry mines or anything, so they're pretty useless at this point, so they'd probably also be scrapped. There we go. Whereas the Stuarts and the Decaturs, they at least carry mines, so I think they'd always be kind of useful. I think we'd redesign this ship and in fact keep it somewhat as is. Could we add another position here? Q, maybe forward center line, double mount, maybe forward center line single mount. That would actually work. Nope, it would not, because it would be too crowded. Leave this. Right, just open for rebuild. You don't really need, it's just a single gun, you don't really need anything better. So in fact we just want to keep it as that. Yes, thank you. And we would rebuild these ships to that standard, and then probably we would send them right into mothballed or even reserve situation. And by that, of course, I mean the other way around. You guys also need to be rebuilt to... Yeah, that looks fine. Yeah. Yes, I know. Thank you. Yes, please. Guys, just rebuild these. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. There we go. And that, I think, would sort of conclude our situation. So lots of active ships, Paul Johnsons, that are under construction. Do we have more that is under construction? All of this is being rebuilt, right? So only really under construction is the Oxnard, which is a city in California, as I learned, and the Rhode Island. In terms of overall situation, we'd be pretty much, in terms of battleships, I think we'd be fine, especially if you take into account the battle cruisers, even if you take into account the ones that the Brits are building. We do still have a good heavy cruiser. Our light cruiser situation is fine as well, especially when you see what we are building. Destroyers, we are lagging behind a bit, to be honest, so I think that is probably something that we would work on. Submarines also a bit, but in fact, let's set up the building of a couple of destroyers, Stuart classes. Oh wait, is it Stuart class? Sorry. No, Paul Johnsons. So we'd probably want to build at least 4 of those. It would put our monetary situation into a bit of a difficult spot. But you know what, all in all I think that would work out because of all these refits here. That would probably work very fine. That being said, I think, save this, this is a very, very fine place to put in. Wait. On foreign station, we need a bit more. Well, you know what, I think that's fine. We can send you to foreign stations. So there we go. Yeah, but with that, I think, you know, we won the war. So let's commemorate our ships sunk. A lot of those were just losses to submarines or mines, so really not that much that we lost in battle, except for a couple of destroyers, and we won't probably remember all of those. Although, you know, quite a couple of those were relatively recent. Um, then we had the battles against the Russians, where we also lost a couple of destroyers. To be honest, I don't really remember this battle. Um, but maybe more importantly, what we lost was AMC. Yeah, that was a bit unlucky. A couple of light cruisers. I mean, it happens. That's what they're there for. Surprising number of Raleigh classes. And Des Moines. Well, Des Moines were in service for such a long time. I mean, you can see that this one, they were pretty much sunk about 10 years after they were built. So, just, you know, remember that was the first rudimentary sort of design, even submerged torpedo tubes, 22 knot speed. So, really not that great. The Tacomas were a much more modern ship here. Other than that, we lost a heavy cruiser torpedoed, so to be honest, I don't think that we need to fret about these ships too much. But we did lose, maybe in the most devastating battle that we saw, the pre-Dreadnought, semi-Dreadnought Ohio, the pre-Dreadnought North Dakota and New York class, and most importantly the New Mexico, after a flash fire turret hit, which killed it right away. Very late in the battle, if I remember correctly. That being said, let's also look at the almanac, briefly at the lost ships, so we know about ours. We never went to war with Germany, we never went to war with Japan or Italy. We were briefly in war against France, where we only really got this heavy cruiser for some reason, I don't really remember when. More importantly against the Russians, with the Kinburn classes here, these very, at the time, fearsome machines of 8 guns, of 13-inch calibers. Also a ship, a pre-Dreadnought battleship, with these very funny 4 12-inch guns. Couple of heavy cruisers. That was the time when I was very afraid, and I didn't really have an answer to these guys, but at the end of the day, you know, we beat them. And of course, this last war against the Brits, although we had an early war against them as well. Do you see that? I think this is the year that was built, right? Yes. Yes, it must be. But yeah, we did sink a couple of their very precious battleships, of the Resolution class, of the Renown class even, of the Inflexible, and the Incomparable, 16-inch guns. I was very afraid of those ships, but we met the Incomparable under sort of favorable circumstances, and the Renown was really neatly sunk as well. So there we go, let's resign. Yes, that's what we want to do. Yes, there we go. Wars and prestige, the early war against the Entente Cordiale, I would say, over here, very short, and then a more extended wars against France, Russia, these battles that were, yeah, I think the Battle of the Baltic States or Battle of Finland, one of those was really bad for us. Brief continuation war, and then, as you know, against towards the end, this continuation war, I'm calling it. So just the war against the UK that was interrupted by a very brief peace, and then took off against the enemy as well. Very good battles over here, so you can see our prestige exploding. Fleet tonnage, you should also be able to see, but no. Yeah, you can pretty much see that after the wars, so the red line is us. So after the wars, you can see that we are always reducing massively our active fleet, sometimes because we are rebuilding stuff. This is a typical refurbishment thing where we probably fit a new director or something. Same here. But yeah, this is an interesting bit. I think it was also when we were in the middle of replacing the director, so that's where something very typical you can see in my battles. But also, you know, this sort of peeking of stuff and then taking it lower. We should also be able to see that on the British side, of course, they were dominating throughout the game, probably until around about the Russian War. And then, especially, you can see that in this second half about of our war here, the tonnage really dropped off as we began to sink their heavy ships. On the other hand, the Germans building up just slightly and continuously. Economy, yes, we overtook the Brits in spending on the base resources somewhere before our first war, but I think that dropped off really basically below that. Ships sunk, yes, so we did lose battleship the Brits, but we did sink many more. We did lose 2 pre-dreadnoughts, lots and lots of auxiliaries. That's a really massive amount. You can also see that the Brits really liked their submarines. So, that being said, it's very nice to know that we will get an aircraft carrier. But yeah, that's been it. I very much liked the series. I very much liked playing with the US, and we were sort of diplomatically not at all fringed. We could always pretty much pick the fight that we wanted, or at least get into another fight, although sometimes that was really a bit more that we can chew. I'm not perfectly sure whether our design decision to always build our ships to a long-range design was really required. We didn't really venture into Northern Europe except in the war against the Russians. And that really taught me to do otherwise, because it didn't really help. But then again, you know, who knows, maybe that did save us a couple of times when our morale was slightly better than it might have otherwise been. So that was certainly good. Also the reliable engines were godsend. Although I think I could have done more in terms of minesweepers and submarines a bit earlier. We were really sort of lagging behind on that level. That being said, I think for the next time we will be returning to command, so to a bit more modern naval situation. But afterwards, I think I would like to try out a bit of a different nation in ruled waves. Maybe Japan, maybe Italy, maybe Austria-Hungary, which I think we can do if we pick an additional one. So maybe a bit of an underdog that doesn't, you know, have it as easy as the US, but needs to play the diplomatical game a bit more considerably, but has a bit more of a strategically interesting position maybe to play around with. So that's why I'm sort of tending to lean towards a Japan run for the next run. But let me know your thoughts, and I very much thank you for watching the series. And I'm out.